Well, good. Hi, everybody. Um, I'm sorry we're fashionably late this evening. My name is Melissa Gerson. I am an eating disorder treatment provider and a specialist. And I'm here today with someone who really doesn't need much of an introduction, but I will introduce her anyway. I'm here with Kathryn Morgan, who is a well-known ballet dancer, initially a dancer with the New York City Ballet and most recently with the Miami City Ballet. And she has grown beyond her role as a ballet dancer also to be a speaker, a teacher, and really an advocate to those in the dance community. And Kathryn, I'm really excited to talk to you today. I'll share a little bit about how this meeting came about. So I'm a therapist and I work with eating disorders, but I also was a ballet dancer in my last life. So I trained at the School of American Ballet and I danced with the Miami City Ballet for about 7 years professionally. And then I left ballet ultimately and went back to school and pursued training in psychology. And here I am now, many years later. And I work with eating disorders in particular, and I have a subspecialty in the treatment of performers and athletes who struggle with eating and body image concerns. And, when this COVID crisis started to build and really became our reality, I was really struck with the impact that this was having on dancers, with performers in general, but particularly, ballet dancers are very close to my heart. And I was really just thinking about what a challenge this is, being sort of derailed, all the uncertainty, being unable to come together with your peers, with your company members, with your classmates, and with just the general sense of, the not knowing about kind of what was next. And within that, really thinking about what a challenge this is for people, for dancers in particular, who are just naturally going to be very concerned about fitness, about body shape and weight. So I reached out to Kathryn and we agreed together that this might be a nice opportunity for a little bit of collaboration to talk about, not just the impact of COVID and how that is influencing dancers right now, particularly in relation to staying in shape and coping emotionally with this challenge, but also more broadly, just talking about the dance world and the challenges for dancers around, that this is such an aesthetic pursuit, and dancers are constantly evaluating themselves and being evaluated, and that's just an ongoing reality and challenge to the field. So Kathryn, hello.
Hi.
For a start, I know you're so connected with the community, and people reach out to you and they share a lot with you about kind of what they're experiencing more generally, more recently. And I'm curious what you're finding, what people are talking about, some of the struggles that people are sharing right now.
It's interesting. I mean, I've sort of always been that go-to resource even before this hit. A lot of I spoke out about body image and ballet and both on YouTube and on the Today Show. And then I had a lot of dancers reaching out to me then. And that was about a month before this started. And the stories I hear just in general about these young kids who are like, I mean, I would get messages from like 12-year-olds who are on diets and are told to lose weight. And I'm like, you're 12, or I would complete other end of the spectrum, get messages from older women who I'm in my 40s and 50s, or, and I had an eating disorder when I was 12 in ballet and I'm still dealing with it all these years later. And just I still hear what my ballet teacher said to me in my head about, oh, you have back fat or whatever. And I'm just thinking this is not okay anymore. And then recently through this pandemic, I've had messages from dancers going, can you please, show us what you're doing in a day, because I'm struggling and I know I need to lose weight while I'm out, and I want to keep my technique, and I'm doing like 4 classes a day and I'm doing this and that. And I'm thinking, you're doing more than you were before. So it's kind of gotten into this warped feeling of everybody's panicked because they're worried about losing what they had. They're worried about getting behind. They're worried about, everyone else coming back gloriously and they're going to be the one that's stuck. But I saw something the other day that was like, it was a little meme. It was like, you don't expect your, the biggest ballet stars in the world to come back in tip top shape. Why are you putting that pressure on yourself?
Yeah.
I feel like the professionals are the ones going, yeah, well, okay, we're taking a break. Not all of us, but some of us have used this time as a break and we're just maintaining. You have to remember, I'm the person that took 9 years off. and got back into a professional company. So a couple of months is not the end of the world. I think I get really worried when I hear these kids saying, I'm worried about eating while I'm here. I think I've just decided to not eat as much because I'm not doing as much. And I think that's a warped mentality of like food as reward or food as, because I exercise, I can eat. So I'm seeing these sort of, and you're the professional in this. So I'm
Yeah.
seeing this sort of weird mentalities start to develop that I don't know if these kids had this before. And now what's scaring me is that they're developing it through this pandemic,
Yeah.
because they're so paranoid. So it's really, really upsetting, actually, to hear from all
Yeah,
these
I
kids that
hear
are
you.
just.
I mean, it's kind of like a perfect storm in a way because,
Mhm.
here we are, like this is a crisis. There's no question. It's like a community crisis,
Yeah.
for everybody in the globally, but just thinking about the dance world. I mean, it's a real crisis. There's so much uncertainty and there's this total loss of control.
Hmm.
And then there's also this way that through social media, through the media, there's this camera on other people. And so naturally you're looking at the world around you and you're imagining, that's what happens with social media. It's so curated that you're imagining that everyone out there is super motivated. They're working their butts off.
Hmm.
They're eating right and getting in their best shape ever. And they're going to come out of this stronger. And so there's, there's so much tension in that and fear and anxiety in that, coupled with the loss of control and the isolation, right? Because
Yes.
there's so little support already in the dance world, but then many people are isolating alone. So I feel worried about it as this is kind of like a platform for a lot of difficulty for people,
Hmm.
which is kind of why I wanted to reach out to you. Maybe together we can share, I don't know if you would call it like some tips or maybe just some guidelines to kind of help ground people a little bit right now. You know,
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking to one of my dearest friends who is a first soloist with Ballet West, and she was like, I'm kind of using this time to be a normal person,
yeah,
because we
yeah,
were saying you cannot possibly be in that kind of shape unless you are rehearsing and performing
yeah.
every day, all day.
You're
Like
not
it's
going to do that in your living room. Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
And
And
I
I
think,
see these
yeah.
kids too who are like jumping and trying to do point work in their kitchen, and I'm going, this
Ouch.
is not, this is actually going to completely backfire on you from trying to, you just can't be in that kind of shape unless you're doing it. So putting that, you're setting yourself up for failure if you have that mentality.
Yeah. And I think it's that, that it's a very dangerous place to be when you have that, like, dancers are driven. I mean, it's like the curse and the benefit, one of the positives and one of the biggest curses of being a dancer is that you're very driven, you're very motivated, you want it. But I see so often that it can really get people into trouble. So for
Yeah.
example, I think what I'm hearing from people is, I'm going to use this time off to get in really good shape. And shape, sometimes I think people mean like slim down.
Hmm.
And I'm going to come back and kind of wow everybody because I'm
Yeah.
going to look really good. And I think that is so dangerous because number one, this is not the environment to start dieting. Again, going back to it being the perfect storm environment where you're isolated, you're feeling a loss of control, you're feeling uncertain about your future, you have way too much time on your hands, way too much headspace to get obsessive. Um, and so, I think all of those factors come together to make it really easy to get very kind of dysfunctional and you're thinking about food. Um,
Hmm.
and then the other thing is that, you know, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that dieting itself has been studied like very broadly. There's a lot of research behind dieting. And what happens when you suddenly change your eating behavior and like restrict your food is that there's all these changes hormonally and neurobiologically that actually make you hungrier, make you
Yes.
more focused on food becomes more like appealing. Actually, it's like a survival mechanism in the brain. So if food becomes more interesting, you feel hungrier and your metabolism slows down. So
Yeah.
like the idea of being in quarantine and then kind of going on a diet, it's gonna like work a number on your brain. I mean, 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely. I was always, when I'm dancing, I'm always in my best shape when I'm not actually so worried about food and calories. It's when I fixate on it. It's when in my past and recently that I was told that I was not going to do a role or taken out of a role or whatever, or you got to get in shape, that I fixated on it. I actually ended up eating less and gaining weight
Yeah,
because you're so stressed that it doesn't work. Like it doesn't work.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, so it's really hard though, because you're kind of in this place of, like, well, I know I'm not supposed to think about it, but I'm thinking about it. I know
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to relax about it, but I feel like more stressed about it than ever.
Yes.
One of the things, just coming from the fact that like dieting is not sustainable long term, the idea of, a restricted diet and like a very over controlled diet, have you had the experience, and I wonder if this is the case for you, where when you're in a better place, you're actually kind of listening to your body a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely.
That you're not going by the book or by a diet or by rules, but you're actually like, am I feeling hungry? If I'm feeling hungry, I'm going to eat. I'm going to pay attention to, am I feeling full? And that mindfulness and awareness that you are able to kind of achieve in maybe a more relaxed headspace actually leads to better weight maintenance or better weight control. Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, it's amazing actually. I'll never forget even recently just like not having to worry about and just you know what, I'm just going to listen to my body, do the intuitive eating thing. It's so much easier to maintain, and it kind of, your body goes, okay, I'm going to do my thing now instead
Yeah.
of like trying to fight it, I think. And I've had many conversations with fellow dancers who it's like the minute you stop worrying about it and you just start listening to your body and not fixating, it's like, oh, there it goes. Now it's coming off. You know what I mean? It's just a backwards thing, but it works.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
do you connect with this? I see this so much in dancers where, like, dancers may join a company or join a ballet school, and their bodies are like perfectly fine. They don't need to lose weight.
Mhm.
But there's this kind of mentality in ballet, like I can be better, I can be thinner. If I'm thinner, I'm going to get more roles. And then that kind of starts a problem because, like, unfortunately, in the ballet world, um, sometimes weight loss is equated with you're working really hard.
Mhm.
Like there's a way that oh, this, she's like really in her zone now. Like look at her, she's or him, like like she's lost a few pounds, and sort of like there's this idea that it's like connected to like how hard you're working or how into your career you are. But the problem is that then you kind of personally are like raising the bar in a sense for yourself, and then there's an expectation that that's your new normal from
Mhm.
the company or from your teachers, and then you have the pressure then to maintain this lower weight when you were actually perfectly fine to begin with. Like, have you seen
Completely.
that happen to people? And it's kind of a disaster.
All the time,
Yeah.
all the time. And I think that's the problem is then you start getting compliment. It's also that weird psychology of then you get compliments. It's like, oh, well, maybe if I go even further,
Yeah.
and then
Yep.
it's this weird thing. I think the other problem too is when dancers first get hired, especially females, many of us at 16, 17, 18 are not fully developed yet. So your artistic director sees you in this prepubescent, even though you're 17, prepubescent look, and then all of a sudden a few years later you become a woman and they're going, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Why are you gaining weight? And it's like, well, actually I'm doing what I'm supposed to. And like,
Because the body should not remain between
right.
16 and 23, your body should change. There is no body that should stay the same.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so true. It's such a bind for dancers
And
because
you are then
that,
expected to look like you did at 17. And
yeah,
it's like, I can't look like I did when I was 17. Thank you, but no.
yeah. There's
So
nothing normal about it. And so I mean, that's such a great point that there's that natural development that's going to happen from like a prepubescent body into an adult body.
mhm.
And then on top of it, dancers tend to also, regardless of their age, want to sort of one up themselves or do better, or and often that's through this kind of focus on like if my body shape and my weight.
Yeah.
I remember in my career, I kind of had that sort of mentality, and I remember my body was fine when I got into Miami City Ballet, and then I lost weight, and I got a lot of reinforcement for it. And then I started to feel a lot of pressure, like, okay, now this is my new normal. And it
Mhm.
was, and that weight, my lower weight, was not easy to maintain. Like I really couldn't eat much. And so there I was, like for years of my career, really having to undereat in order to maintain the expectation. And then I remember this one moment when I got sick and I lost even more weight. And the choreographer came up to me and he was like, Melissa, you look great right now. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh no, this is awful because this is too much. Like I can't, I can't maintain it. And I remember when my body like normalized a little bit, it didn't work as well for me, like my career kind of took a little bit of a dip. Um,
Yeah.
so
And I
it,
think it's sad too, because that happens all the time. When all of a sudden you've been so ill, you get thinner, and then they're like, "Great job." And you're
yeah,
like, "Really?
yeah,
You rewarded me for having the flu?" It's
yeah,
like some
yeah.
sick sort of mentality that it's totally backwards, you know?
So what thoughts do you have about what is going to change here? Because it's just, this is the reality. I mean, I danced now so many years ago, like 20
Hmm.
something, God, maybe 30 years ago. That's so scary. 25 years ago, I guess, in the
Hmm.
90s in Miami. And I mean, like it's still the same deal. Like things have not really changed
No,
much
they have not.
since.
People say, "Oh, it was not the '70s and no, it is still the standard is still there. I have lived this both back at City Ballet and now.
Yeah.
The standard is still there. It is still this bones prepubescent. I've had so many friends tell me that directors have told them until they can see every bone in your chest, you're not thin enough. One friend of mine a few years ago was told to try cocaine to get her weight down by her director.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
going, how has this changed? Like the standard is not there. Yes, obviously, you have to be fit to be a dancer simply by virtue of the fact of what it takes physically, daily
Yeah.
class, rehearsals, thing like you have to be in some sort of shape. But the standard of having to do all of that athletic work and look like skin and bones is just it's for many of us it's impossible. For me especially, I have an autoimmune condition that is I physically can't. I have Hashimoto, so I physically cannot. It's a miracle I'm as small as I am. I'm a size 2 and I was considered too large.
Wow.
So it's very, very challenging for a lot of us. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's the standard. Like what is too far? Like it's just the thinner the better right now, and it's
Yeah.
still the way it is. And I think the first step is to, that's obviously not going to change overnight, but having some sort of resource for the dancers, because the other problem is that when you're told to lose weight in a ballet company, they're like, figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. You get the weight talk, and they say you need to drop weight, but there's no guidance. There's no connection with any sort of resource.
Nope. And there's no mental health, because that's my big one too, is mental health for dancers.
Mhm.
We beat ourselves up so badly. Our job description is to look in the mirror and analyze our faults and know
Yeah,
exactly what our faults are and fix them. And so that takes a huge toll on you mentally. And there no ballet company that I know of has any sort of resource for that for dancers. It's just sort of like, well, just do it. Just do, what's your problem? And the
it's
rabbit holes that people go down
yeah,
is awful.
and it's so interesting because there's a whole field of performance enhancement. I mean, there's
Mhm.
so much that could be done that's really, professional athletes engage in a lot of kind of therapeutic work around enhancing the performance and yet that's not really part of ballet, so it's almost a missed opportunity. I mean,
Right.
beyond just helping dancers with more support and with more kind of tools for coping, more like reinforcement to be able to cope and not just to cope but to really thrive.
Yeah.
um, if that could be more available, it would, it would bring so much more out of dancers, because you often hear, so many dancers will talk about how going through injury or going through difficult periods, like that learning experience really enhances their art form and sort of brings them up to the next level. um, so often, it's sort of a shame that you have to kind of go through a
Hmm.
process like that. And oftentimes I think when people are injured and they really are, out of ballet for a period, oftentimes they do connect with some kind of coaching or some kind of support, or whether even if it's just like spiritual support.
Right.
um, but especially, especially right now given the crisis, I'm wondering if you're aware of whether there's been an uptick in support services that are out there for dancers.
Um, I don't, not for dancers specifically in terms of this.
Yeah,
There's support services, obviously financially, but not for this.
yeah,
Um, because I've heard more than ever. I've been getting more comments and messages than ever
Really?
about what do I do? I'm really depressed, this and that. My eating disorder is kicking back in. I had it managed, now it's back. And there's nobody really talking about it. And several of us professional dancers are talking about it, but we are not licensed therapists
Yeah, yeah,
or nutritionists or whomever. So it's sort of like we're offering the best advice we can, but it's hard, especially for the young pre-professionals.
yeah,
I feel like they're just like, this is a crucial time in their training and they know it. But the problem is they're taking it to an extreme and completely losing their minds over it.
yeah. I mean, it really would be nice if there could be more focus in the or in the earlier years and in the training years around, balanced nutrition and
Mm-hmm.
maybe more education also about the limits of the human body, because I think as dancers, and I think just for the general population also, there's this idea that you can have the body you want. You always see these magazines and it's like, get the bikini body or get the body you want. And so there's
Yeah.
this idea in our culture that, if you do the right thing, you can get whatever body you want. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think the same goes for ballet, that there's this idea that, well, if your body is not, meeting whatever standard there is in whatever the environment you're in, there's something more you can do to get there.
Yeah.
And that's not so accurate. Um,
No,
and
not at all.
there's a cost, there's a huge cost to that effort in many cases.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think some young dancers too, that it's not even just weight, it's like the physicalities of turnout or extension
Right.
or feet. Like
Yeah.
they're like, how can I improve my feet? I'm like, you'd have to break your feet bones. Like
Yeah.
it's there's
Yeah.
your feet are only gonna do what they're gonna do biologically. Your turnout is what it is depending on your hip rotation. So it's kind of the same thing with weight. Like for me, I have a very, very, very short torso and it all of my extra weight goes right there. And I'm never going to have the long torso. I have lovely long arms and legs, but it's still, I'm not going to look like somebody who can have that long torso. And it's just the way it is. And I think a lot of young dancers don't quite get that. They just think, well, I just need to lose more weight and then I'll look good.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's real limits. It's funny because, I used to be a dancer, but now I watch ballet, and I often go to the ballet, and I don't think it's my background that influences where my eye goes, but I find that I appreciate many more body types in ballet. Like I notice when there's a more feminine shape, like and a healthier shape, my eye goes there, and I'm like that looks good to me, that. So it's funny. I sort of wish that that the field would take into account more of like what the audience is feeling and thinking when they look at dancers, because sometimes you can tell when a dancer looks really underweight.
And that's a lot of the other messages I've been getting recently. I'm an audience member and I don't want to see someone who looks sick. I want to see someone who I can relate to, because I don't want to look like that. I don't want my daughter to look like that.
Yeah.
And that's what people are saying. And it's like I think oftentimes, especially artistic directors, we have been so programmed over time to expect to see the skin and bones that we don't actually think, wait a minute, what does the audience actually want to see?
Yeah.
I was on a Zoom call recently with Josh Spell, who was a former PNB dancer, and I loved this, and I'm going to quote him. He was like, the standard is the self, he said, people forget sylphs are dead. And I went, like, so, why is our standard a dead sylph? You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
yeah,
that's good. So I thought, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, no, I totally, that's really kind of like shocking and accurate.
And that was like, mind blowing. And it's so true. And then somebody else commented on the video that I did recently about body image on YouTube. They said, why are you going to, it's hard. Her daughter's in ballet. And she's like, I don't want my daughter to starve herself to be a 3-hour a night entertainer.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was like, oh my gosh, priority. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what these young ones forget too, is because I was there when I was younger, that it was all ballet all the time. I breathed it. Like it was everything. But you forget, what about if you want to have children later? What about, when you stop dancing, have you completely wrecked your entire system? There's more to life than just ballet.
Yeah. So. Which kind of brings me to another point, because I mean, speaking to you in particular, you've been through so many ups and downs in your life, personally, professionally. And, I think that what has been remarkable about your experience is that, it's almost like you've had 9 lives a little bit. Like you've gotten knocked down a lot of times. And every time you've sort of gotten yourself back up again and thrived. And then you've met another challenge and then you like fall and you kind of very quickly get yourself up again. And I think, you know, a sign of true mental health is not how you fare when you're in, things are going great. It's really how you fare when things are not going great. And so I wonder, you have resilience, and I think resilience is kind of the key to survival in the realities of our world, because as we can see from this crisis, like we can't control the world around us, we can't control so much of our lives, but for you, there's been something in you that you've been able to, when things are really hard, not kind of falling apart, but instead connecting with something important to you, refocusing and getting a purpose, and
Right.
then pursuing that new purpose, even if it wasn't exactly what you were looking to do in the first place.
Mhm.
And then before you know it, you kind of you have a new purpose, and then you thrive within that purpose, and then other opportunity kind of comes from there.
Yeah.
So, but maybe can you speak a bit more to that experience? Because I think everybody out there, this is like a collective crisis for the dance world. It's a real kind of like down moment. And can you share from your experience what you do in those moments when you're really down and you need to find a way to pick yourself back up again, find some purpose, find some focus, keep yourself healthy, keep yourself grounded? What goes on internally for you that's helped you to be able to do that?
Thank you. First of all, I was not always like that. I think part of it was that growing up, from the time could walk, all I wanted to do was be a dancer. Like I remember vividly at 8, going to see the New York City Ballet's Nutcracker, walking out of there and telling my parents, I'm going to be up there one day. And like that's going to be me. And I worked so hard for it, and I didn't want anything else. I never wanted anything else. I gave up things. Like it was just like laser beam focus. And then I got into New York City Ballet, and I did very well. And then when that all fell apart, I had nothing else. And so it was actually my dad who kind of let me wallow on the couch for a little bit. He was like, all right, you get a month on the couch. And then he was like, okay, what's next? Come on. You're not going to you can't let this all go. And I think that's what motivates me is I don't want to let all the hard work that I did completely have been for nothing. I want to constantly, like, it's not good enough for me to just kind of fail. Like I didn't want to be the flash in the pan soloist who at 21 got sick, 23 left the company, and you never heard from her again. So I was like, this is not the end of my story. This is not, there's something more that I have to achieve, that I have to
You kind of
accomplish.
wanted to take control, like you just
100%.
decided to like take control of your own story. Yeah.
Absolutely. I worked too hard to not, and to have it be over by 23. So that's when I started YouTube. And so that led to a million other things, and then different projects. And then I reached out to YAGP, and now I judge for them. And I started the column and dance. So it was kind of like I started to realize, okay, I'm sort of this guru tell all who
Mm-hmm.
kind of will constantly inspire these kids, because I didn't have that at that age. I mean,
Yeah.
when I first got point shoes, no one taught me how to tie my own point shoes. I had to figure it out. So I was kind of like, what did I want to learn? So then I started realizing, well, I like this mentor thing. So,
Yeah.
and then throughout that process, personal things happened, married, divorced because my husband was unfaithful, the whole thing, less than a year. And so that was like a major downer again. And then I was like, nope, this is not the end of my story. I
Yeah.
can't let what this man did to me ruin all of the other hard work. So that's when I started dancing again and did that for me. And then it was just, I don't know, I constantly have like these new goals and these new
Yeah.
things. And I think it comes from me, but it also comes from my father. My father was a Naval Academy graduate. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like at 27, decided, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to go to dental school. And dad went to dental school, and now he's had his own practice for almost 30 years. So it's like, I think I get that from him.
Yeah.
It's just like constantly, what's next? I'm not here to fail. It might not go the way I planned. It certainly did not go the way I planned. Everything I've achieved has been because something went awry. So, I started the YouTube because I got sick, or different things. Now I'm an advocate for body image and mental health because I was beaten up in my own career over it. Definitely did not go to plan. I did not
Yeah.
want to be
Yeah.
taken out of roles.
Yeah.
But it's kind of all led to this thing. And I always sort of think, well, what can I do with this? How can I help somebody else? And that's why I'm so adamant about sharing, because I get very frustrated with these other dancers who just post all wonderful things and look
Yeah.
at my
Yeah.
pictures and I'm doing this role. And I'm like, in reality, that is not what's happening.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is not how it goes. And these kids, it damages them. These are the kids who are writing me going, I see all these dancers and I don't look like them, and I just, social media is like getting to me, and I want to look like the Instagram dancers, and I'm going, Instagram is all planned and perfect and this.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I don't want to be that person. I want to be the one sitting here going, yep, I was taken out of Firebird because I was told my body was not in shape at a size 2. Like, you know, so I'm happy to be that person. I
Yeah, like
love
not
being that
afraid to
person.
be vulnerable. And I think that
Yeah.
really, and that makes it very kind of relatable and approachable. And I
Hmm.
think, it's interesting because, throughout your career, there were times where it's so interesting that you had this struggle like the years right after you left City Ballet. And it's really interesting because you put yourself in front of the audience. And
Hmm.
even at times when I think you had mentioned like your hair was falling out and your body just wasn't, you didn't feel good in your body. But like, I think that's part of what was so amazing about your journey is that you still like put yourself out there. You didn't cover yourself up. You were, and I think that's also part of what made you so relatable because you were real, that you weren't kind of hiding. And
Yes.
can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know that feeling as a dancer, you go into the studio one day and you hate your leotard and you're just looking at yourself and it's just not a good day and you're bloated and you just feel like crap. And, you go through class just focused on how you just don't like how you look and you just can't get yourself in a zone. And so I'm guessing that you've had days like that too. What do you do in those moments to get yourself out of it? Because there's nothing productive about taking a class in that way, hating
No,
yourself.
I
Yeah.
think it's a matter of, those are sometimes the days, and as a professional, you can do this. Those are sometimes where I realize that, you know what, I'm going to leave class early today,
Mm.
because pushing through upset and miserable and whatever, I actually sprained an ankle doing that once. So I learned from that. I realized that one center or like one day of jumping in class is not going to like make me a 10 times better dancer if I'm having a bad day. If anything, it could. You're distracted, you're not thinking where your feet are, and you pop a ligament. And that's exactly what happened to me at City Ballet. I was having a really rough day. I was rehearsing Who Cares, the lead in Who Cares, Pink Girl. And I was doing the little manege PK jump thing and just was not in it. And I had done it 82 times and didn't speak up and whatever. And I crunched and was out for 4 months. So for me, I've learned how to work smarter and not harder. And I think the mental aspect is so important that if I'm not there mentally, sometimes it's better just to take a step back. It's just like, I don't, or I stop looking at myself in the mirror. I'll just go across the floor and not look, you know? And I think the more you can at least be aware that you're having a bad day and go, okay, this is a bad day. I'm not feeling this, having a rough day, just going to be smart. That's the first step. And
Mhm.
in terms of me being vulnerable, and why I tell people this, because I've struggled with it. I've struggled with, maybe I shouldn't tell everybody that I was taken out of a role the day before the casting went up. That doesn't make me look good. But actually, what it does is that helps people. That helps the 14-year-old me who's having a bad day. You
Yeah.
know, it benefits no one for me to hide behind it and lie and say that everything is great. And, yeah, I'm a soloist with this and I did this part. No, that does not benefit anyone. So I thought about it for a long time. I didn't want to, give tell the story emotionally. I didn't want to attack or blame. I just stated facts. But I wanted young dancers to know that, yeah, this happened, because that helps them. That makes me relatable, as you said, and it makes them see that, yeah, it's not all wonderful all the time. That's what helps them.
Reality. I mean, that's
Yeah.
ballet. I mean, no matter who it is,
Yeah.
most people in dance who get anywhere have, setbacks or hard moments or
Hmm.
disappointments.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and then that particular struggle is very much, related to a real challenge within the ballet world
Yeah.
around body and shape.
Yeah.
And like I think that's just unfortunately kind of one of the biggest challenges for young people getting into the field. You can be so passionate and so talented.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's just the kind of this one piece that can often be sort of out of your control. And there's just not a lot of diversity still in the ballet scene when
Yeah.
it comes to body shape.
Because you're even I mean, many of us who have struggled with this, we're even told by artistic staff going, well, we don't want you to look like anyone else. We want you to look like you. But then you see the people that are actually getting all the parts and you're not getting them and you're going, really? Like it's just that is just a phrase. We want you to look like you, but then they don't
Yeah.
actually. So
Well, the
that's what's
messages, yeah,
challenging.
the messages by casting and by just sort
Mhm.
of, signs of favoritism. The messages usually is like, if you're thin, you're gonna get it. You're gonna see advancement. I mean, there's no
100%.
question, and that's sort of the way it's always been.
And I still feel like there is, but like the way your body is, how thin you are, takes precedence over artistry, which
Yeah.
I don't, because some of the best artists that I know don't look like skin and bones. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes you never get to see them on stage
Mhm.
because they're not the right aesthetic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There's no question.
mhm.
Speaking of the aesthetic, I want to get back to something else you were talking about before. I'm so grateful that when I was dancing, there was no social media, because I think it would have made me
Same.
crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. I
When I
mean,
was younger.
it's just nonstop, the images, and, you know, and it's, as we discussed, it's just so curated. I mean, yeah, people are going to put their best photo forward. They're going to capture that moment. They're going to use filters, like whatever it is.
They're going to Photoshop their feet.
They're going to Photoshop. I mean, definitely. And so, and I think that especially, younger dancers, as you're developing your confidence and your like ability to kind of cope with this stuff, you can get, you're influenced by those images, and they can really defeat your self-esteem. Um, so when you get those moments where you see something and you get that sort of twinge of like, oh my gosh, for whatever reason, I'm not measuring up, or I'm not meeting the standard in the same way. How do you cope with that? Because I think that's a universal experience, no matter who you are, and whether you're a dancer or not a dancer, whether even if you're a mother, you see another person is mothering, better than you're mothering, or
Yeah.
someone's house is better than yours, or their dog is cuter. I don't know. Like, there's just so many ways that you can compare yourself to other people. I mean, it's just, that's the world we're living in now. So I'm curious about how you cope with that, since you're in a field where that's so prominent.
Well, I'm not perfect with it. I mean,
Yeah,
goodness knows I still struggle with it. I definitely still struggle with what people think. Even
yeah,
though I portray that I'm outspoken, whatever, it's still a
yeah, yeah.
very, I'm very much an introvert. I am very shy. People are like, you're so outspoken. I'm like, I'm really not.
Yeah,
I'm really not. Um, I think for me, there's no magic answer. I think for personally, when I see somebody who's thinner and they're getting all the parts and I'm not, or I'm taken out, all I have to do is tell myself there's a reason for this. There's a reason for this.
yeah.
You are the spokesmodel. You are the role model. You are the one who stands up for the kids who are not. This is your platform. This is why. I wouldn't be sitting here if I was this thin one and whatever and everything was easy. And people write to me saying, we are so glad you are this person. We are so glad that I love that you're a role model for my daughter. Thank
Yeah.
you for speaking up. Thank you for doing this. That's what I have to remind myself. No, I didn't get to do Firebird, but look at all the kids you're reaching. Look
Yeah,
at all the
yeah,
difference you're making.
yeah,
Um, no, you didn't get to finish out your career at City Ballet because you got sick at 21, but look what else you've done. And I think for me, at least for a lot of dancers, our measure of success is doing, Sleeping Beauty at the Met, or doing Firebird, or doing the Prima Bolt role. And that's not, at the end of the day, the most important thing in life. And that's so hard for dancers to remember because that is our measure of success. Oh, the principals are the more successful than the soloists, or the principals are more successful than the core. And that is our measure of success. When in actuality, it's who you are as a person, who you are, are you helping other people? Are you being a role model? Are you someone they can look up to? I've had to change my measure of success. Because again, for years, that was like, I didn't get to do whatever role and now I'm a failure. That's not the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, now I have a lot of distance from my career, but one thing that I thought of as you were talking is I remember how, like, when I think back about my career, what I remember is like moments here and there,
Mhm.
yeah, there were some really nice roles and those were great moments. There was like camaraderie with other people in the company. Those are things that I remember. I remember like having put my best effort forward, like that was really important to me. Those are things that I value and make me feel that I accomplished something. But when I think back about the nitty gritty of the things I would worry about, so for example, I think you know how this is, what cast are you? Are you first cast?
Oh, yes.
Like, you know
Yes.
what I mean? And something, I
Uh-huh.
don't remember what cast I was in. I have no memory. Like there are certain roles I remember, and that's great that I got to dance them. But who the hell cares what cast I was? So
Mhm.
I think taking yourself, I don't know if this relates so much to the social media thing, but I think just taking yourself out of those little sort of insignificant, really, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
details, and focusing more on the bigger picture of, who do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? What's important to you about, how you're living your life from one day to the next? And when you're 50 or 60 or 70 or 80, what do you want to say for yourself? What do you want to look back on and feel good about?
Yeah.
What do you want to have contributed? And so I think when you think back, you don't want to have been isolated with your TheraBand, by yourself all day, like trying to like get your feet stronger.
Yes.
Like that's not going to be, you know what I mean? You're going to want to say, something, I connected with people, I connected with the audience, I had some good opportunity, I know I worked hard. So I think it's really useful to dig down a little bit and maybe even during this crisis, how do you want to get through this crisis?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be to your friends, to your family? What do you want, you don't want to have regrets about how
Mhm.
you chose to spend the time, and that, you know, like that you spent the time being constructive rather than destructive,
Right. When
So
I
I,
think, people
yeah,
say to me, like, what is your proudest moment? Very rarely does a specific role pop into my head. What is one of my favorite career
yeah,
highlights, obviously, are the roles. But in terms of what are you proud of you that you achieved, what are you, what is means the most to you, it's very rarely, oh, the fact that I, bowed in front of the golden curtain at Lincoln Center. That was wonderful. It's a
yeah,
special moment. Dancing Juliet was a special moment. Aurora, goodness knows, that was
yeah,
stressful but lovely.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but when I think back of what I'm most proud of, it's none of that. It's none of that. It's starting the YouTube when I was literally staring off the edge of a cliff. It is inspiring these kids. It's these stories that these kids tell me. It's, being the one to be brave enough to speak out about what happened to me with this or that, it's the overcoming. That's what I'm proudest of. It has nothing to do with a role.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that really says it all.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good message for the audience. And I can imagine from your experience how you would look at all of the struggles and then sort of the flexibility that you showed, the vulnerability and the determination to, find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
Um,
Because even like you were saying, with certain roles, I'll look back at old photographs and I'm like, I don't remember doing that.
yeah,
Just like, I
yeah,
did that part? Really? Like, I don't know. What cast? Who cares? I was third cast Juliet, got to do it, came
yeah,
in
yeah.
signature
And you
role.
remember that, like that's
Yeah.
important. You remember, right? Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a lot of insignificant stuff, I remember, especially at SAB, how much attention did you get from the teacher in the class?
Mm.
When I
Hmm.
look back, who cares? It doesn't matter, just
No.
I feel good that I, put in the effort and that I did the best that I could and I made the most out of my career. Um, yeah, I think that's a really good lesson. I think, the other thing that I want to mention before we sign off, and who knows, maybe we'll have another discussion like this, and maybe next time we can take questions. I realize now I should have multitasked a little bit
No,
better.
I'd love to. I think we definitely need a part two.
We do the part two. But one thing I just want to, being like an eating disorder person, I feel like obliged to kind of throw out just a couple of things, suggestions to folks out there if you are struggling with your eating. One tip that I would really give you is regular eating. I can't tell you how important that is. when we have people who come to us with full-blown eating disorders, the first thing that we're doing is we begin to work on a regular pattern of eating so that you're eating throughout the day, every 4 hours or so, not skipping meals, not missing, restricting certain food groups, really trying to get into a pattern of regular eating. We also talk a lot about planning ahead, to really think to yourself, if I want to tomorrow be in a regular eating schedule, so I'm not getting in my head and I'm nourishing myself throughout the day, and I'm, it really helps to plan ahead, set an idea for yourself. Like, this is what I'm going to do for breakfast. This is what I'm going to do for lunch. Not in a neurotic way, because it can definitely go that way. It can get to, I'm going to write it down and I'm going to
every calorie. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, so this is thinking about it differently, but really kind of coping ahead, planning ahead, and really thinking also about what's going to get in your way. What are some of the thoughts that might get in your way? Like, will getting on the scale get in your way? Weighing yourself can be really destructive. Oftentimes people say when they get on the scale in the morning, that dictates not only how they feel, but also how they take care of themselves, how they eat. So really reflecting on that and trying to, if you can decrease the scale use or just become more mindful of what it leads you to do. Because, ideally, regardless of the number on the scale, we want to be nourishing yourself regularly and trying to really get in touch with hunger and fullness. If you are hungry, it is really important to eat. If you are full, it's a good time to reflect on whether you need to keep eating. And if you find yourself, during COVID right now is especially a hard time with, you want to snack, you want to keep going back to the refrigerator. Like, it's so easy to want to eat to soothe or eat to pass time or eat to procrastinate. Whether you're a dancer, you're a non-dancer, that's going to be a struggle for everybody. And so, taking a moment and really, I have this kind of, there's a woman who's done a lot of writing about eating disorders. Her name is Janine Roth, and Geneen. She's fantastic. And she talks about buzzing foods and humming foods. And a buzzing food is like, you walk past the pizza place, you smell the pizza and you want it, like, it's almost like an impulse, I smell it, I want it, I'm going to have it. That's a buzzing food. Whereas a humming food is more like, I'm feeling hungry, I feel like a peanut butter sandwich. I've been thinking about pizza. I've been kind of wanting pizza for a while. Those are kind of times where it's got a little bit more mindfulness and forethought. And so, like, go for it, allow yourself to have that thing that you've been wanting. Whereas if it's more of a buzz, like, I want it now, an impulse, that might be a good moment to kind of stop for a second and sort of think before you act and think about, like, am I really hungry? Or maybe there's something else right now that I want or need. Or you just give myself 5 or 10 minutes. And if I still want it in 10 minutes, then I'm going to go for it. So at any rate, just, it's so hard to kind of in 5 minutes kind of give people, a really constructive, like, method of approaching a very hard time. But, again, I can't overemphasize the importance of fueling your body regularly, both for your health and your performance, and trying to kind of be responsive and aware of your hunger and your fullness and honoring those cues to the best of your ability.
I think that's important. You are far more licensed to give food advice than I am, but I think right now, it's like my friend and I were talking about, use this time to be gentle, use this time to let injuries heal. I feel like so many people are going to come back from this with an injury. And that's the point, and that's missing the point. Small injuries I've had feel great right now. And I think the key is just to not go for broke. You know what I mean? Just be gentle in all aspects, because we are going to get back to normal life. It might take a while, but we will. But the other thing I want to say kind of has something to do with this. It does, but a lot of dancers, I've talked to several dancers lately who are like, I think I want to quit ballet and I feel like a failure and I just want to say to everybody, if you no longer want to dance, you are not a failure. That does not equal success and failure. Like, what if you want to do something else? What if you want to, what if you have another passion? Why are you sticking with ballet? Because I feel like I have to. Why? Your success as a person is not whether or not you're in ballet. Like it's not. So if you decide that this is not something you want to do, or this is something you are burnt out, or this is something that is making you miserable, that's okay. Like you can do something else. You can still appreciate ballet, you can still be involved somehow, but don't let this, like get to you and you start to think you're a failure. Especially during this time. If you are realizing after this pandemic, you know what? I don't know if I want to go back to ballet. That's fine. Go do something else,
I
be
mean,
happy.
yeah, I mean, without question, the skills of ballet, like the determination, the focus, I mean, those skills transfer so well to anything else
Mhm.
that you're going to do with your life.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I know, for my business, when I hire people, if I see someone has a ballet background, I'm immediately like, oh my God, that person is going to be such a good worker, such a hard worker,
Disciplined.
so focused, so disciplined.
Yep.
So, I mean, while like ballet doesn't necessarily develop other skills, like you don't learn to type, you have to learn to type after later,
Yeah.
you don't learn how to necessarily, I don't know, maybe that nowadays everybody knows how to type. I remember when I left ballet and I was pretty young, I was like 26, I had to teach myself how to type because at the time we weren't really on computers or anything like that. And I didn't know how, but there's a lot of skills that you're lacking because you've spent your whole life in ballet, but those skills are really easy to get, really easy to get. But those resources that dancers have internally that have gotten them to this place, like those are the hard skills and those are
Mhm.
natural to dancers. So, um,
Yeah.
dancers most often can achieve anything that they want to achieve.
In my SAB class, I think 3 people got into Harvard. You know how
Yeah,
many people Harvard takes per year?
yeah,
Like in total, 3 of them were in my class at SAB. It was ridiculous.
yeah.
Like it's just people love a ballet background because you have the discipline, you have the work, you have to self motivate. I mean, it will serve you no matter what you do.
I
So,
mean, totally, totally. And then just one more thing I just wanted to say.
mhm.
You were saying that about Harvard, and I was like, I just wanted to share that I know that when I was a ballet dancer, that was like the whole world. Like I didn't think there was any other world.
Mhm.
It's so like insulated and just small, and you just think it's everything. But then when you're out of it, it's like remarkable that it is such a small world, and there is so much more to the world. So I mean, I think it's really important, especially right now, to realize that dancers just get in their heads. It's just the way they are, and
Mhm.
it starts with like there's no world but this company, like I have to
Yeah.
be in this company, and then and then outside of this company there's no world behind ballet. I am nothing with ballet, and it's just there, it couldn't be the farther thing from the truth.
Oh yeah, and you have to have other interests. When I got sick and I had to stop dancing, I had nothing
Yeah,
because I had no other interest. I had nothing else. And I think, at least from my own experience, feeling like I had an outside interest in ballet meant I wasn't as serious. Like, so I was like, oh, I'm not gonna do that
yeah,
because I'm a serious dancer.
yes,
No, you have to have other things. You really do.
without question, and it definitely enhances your performance and your
Mhm.
artistry. I mean, there's
Oh
no
yeah.
question.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So well, Kathryn, it was so nice to speak with you today.
Thank you. This was lovely.
Yeah, and I hope to see you again very soon, and
Absolutely.
wishing everybody out there just health, mental health, physical
Yeah.
health, and safety and well-being.
Yeah. Stay safe, you guys. Just be gentle. Enjoy life.
Gentle, I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks.